Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, we have Lee Veltman and Stacey Leppe discussing their experiences with the troubled teen industry, specifically Cascade, Synanon, and the CEDU group of schools. Unfortunately, we had some very serious audio problems with Stacey Leppe, and I've done some very rigorous editing to get the best that we had. I actually edited out probably 10 minutes of audio. So if you're sensitive about bad audio, I wouldn't listen to this show at all because there still is some pieces that really aren't great. So just wanted to provide you with some forewarning that there is bad audio. You don't need to text me or put something in the comments that the audio is bad. I know the audio is bad. So please enjoy the show. Thank you. Today on the show, we have a returning guest, Lee Veltman, who talked to us a couple weeks ago about the troubled teen industry, particularly the Cascade School, CEDU, and other experiences that he had. Lee is back with us tonight. Also, we have a very special guest, Stacey Leppe. Am I pronouncing that right?
Leppe.
Leppe?
Leppe, almost.
Stacey Leppe, who also has some experiences with that same industry. We're going to kind of go in detail about a lot of the complex corporate entities that are all involved with these different individuals and people tonight. So thank you very much for being on the show, Lee Veltman and Stacey Leppe.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. So let's get started. If you want, Lee, why don't you just give a brief, rough background of yourself for people who didn't listen to last week's show, and then talk about Stacey and introduce her and let her tell her story. So if you could get started, please.
Great. So I was basically born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, raised, privileged, troubled teen, went through football and all that stuff, got in trouble, sent to military school in Lexington, Missouri called Wentworth. Then I went to Oxford Academy in Connecticut 2 years later for other issues with grades and stuff. And I think I snuck out my parents' car, stupid stuff like that when I was 15, the reckless driving ticket. And then eventually ended up earning the right to go to a school in Northern California, outside Whitmore, California, called the Cascade School. I actually had a decent experience there. Some really bad, tragic things happened after I'd left. Now, where the school I went to came from is where Stacy and I have spent a lot of time discussing this these last 2 years when we became friends 2 years ago. She went to a place when she was 12 years old, and I kind of want to focus on her story today. So, Stacy,
Yes.
why don't you go ahead and tell us about your birth, your upbringing, and how you ended up at Synanon?
Okay, basically, bottom line, I was born. No, seriously, I don't remember a time in my life. I was actually born from a divorce. Like, in the middle of a divorce, I was born. Okay? And so, basically, my mom got remarried, and I didn't know. I was only like 4 years old, and I didn't know, and I thought I was stuck at the babysitter's for the rest of my life because they thought I was too young to tell. So I started off my life with abandonment issues with my mom. And then I was raised after that, and after I found out everything, I was raised, in upper middle class, classified rich, possibly, with my stepfather and my mother, although I saw my dad all the time, and that was in Los Angeles. The city I was raised in was Encino, and when I was with my dad, I was in Santa Monica. And I'm nervous, okay?
That's okay. Tell me, what school did you go to? Did you go to Santa Monica High or?
I didn't make it to high school.
Okay.
I never made it to high school. I was troubled by the age of 5, by egging houses with my friends, getting up in the middle of the night when we had sleepovers, and I came up with all these good ideas, and
What was main, Stacy? How old were you when you got sent to Synanon, and what was the main issue of why you were there?
Okay, there was a place I went to before Synanon.
Okay, go there.
11 years old, I was sent to an adolescence ward for drug rehab. And because I started at 11 years old, and
Go ahead.
so at 11 years old, I was sent to a drug rehab in Northridge, Northridge
What was
Mental
the name of
Hospital.
what was the name of the
So,
drug rehab in Northridge?
Northridge Mental
Okay.
Hospital, basically.
And how long were you at
And
Northridge Mental Hospital for?
5 months,
Okay.
because I was a really good manipulator, and I made a bet with my psychiatrist. No psychiatrist wanted to deal with me. I was out of control. So I was in Northridge Mental Hospital. I got out of there by making a bet with a psychiatrist that I would get out of July 4th, and I was only 11 years old, and I was so bad that he handed me a check. I'm sorry, for $50. I said $5. For $50, I made a bet with him. He handed me for a check for $50, opened the doors, and released me. And so anyway, I was there for 5 months. And then I hit 12 years old, because it's hard to, like, I'm trying to get to the point of synanon. Then I was at home, and you know, you learn more things the more you go. So I was smoking weed, and I was taking pills like speed, running away from home. I just couldn't seem to feel normal. I can't tell you that I was a good kid, but I didn't have a bad heart. It was like I couldn't grasp, you know, I couldn't
Right.
grasp onto anything.
Hey,
And
Stace,
yeah,
let's go ahead and kind of focus on facts. Remember how we kind of talked about this yesterday.
okay.
And so let
Um,
me ask you some personal questions. Like I said, uh, you were sent to Synanon, and I want to let me talk for a second about Synanon, because Synanon was founded in 1958 with a $33 unemployment check in a seedy flat in Ocean Park, California, actually. And that's where it kind of started before it progressed to the Synanon in Santa Monica Pier, which is now a hotel. And you went to the hotel location, correct?
it's actually called the Phoenix House, and it's a halfway home.
Correct. Now go ahead with how you got sent to
Okay.
Phoenix House.
Okay, I got sent to Synanon, and what's Phoenix House is what it is now because of the line. I was to Synanon. My parents were saying that we were going out to dinner. I got to Synanon, and I knew, and when they pulled up, I knew exactly where it was, what it was. I tried to run. I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't even believe it. I was in shock. I was 12 years old, totally in shock. And they ran after me, and they pulled me in there. And the first thing they did is they put me in a basement, and they shaved my head. Okay, and that's the first thing. And I was this long-haired, you know, surfer girl kind of, you know, image, and they shaved my head.
Correct.
And supposedly it's to break down.
Stacy, let me interject something here, because from what I've researched about the Synanon School, there's actually a movie out that used members from Synanon. And that movie was George Lucas's first movie called THX 1138, I do believe. So that's just a side note there. Go ahead with your story, Stacy. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. Anyway, so I was dragged on there, and I was in shock, complete shock. And these people were being really mean to me, and they were calling me names, and they were just being really mean to me. And and then I could see out a window that they put me in a locked room above, like it's a high-story building, and I could see in a window my parents coming back with suitcases, and they actually made me wear overalls. So my parents had apparently bought me a bunch of overalls behind my back, and so you had to wear overalls there. You couldn't wear anything but overalls, and you had a shaved head, and
Were were
And
the other
so
people there
I was,
excuse me, were the other people there also, did they get the same treatment, shaved heads, etc.?
oh yeah, oh
How many
yeah,
other
There's
they
people were
got the
there
same
with?
treatment.
there's
There's thousands of people there because Santa Monica is not where I stayed. They immediately shipped me off. Santa Monica, and I was screaming out the window, please, please, Mom, help me, and it was like the first time I felt like I was in imprisonment.
What
That
year was that?
um, I'm not I'm not sure what year it was. I mean, I have
about
hard times.
81, 80-ish.
30.
Uh,
Yeah.
yes, about that.
I was 12 years old.
I was born in 1969.
Hey,
So, and I
thanks.
was 12 years old.
Gotcha.
So,
Hey,
There's a
I'm
mess.
gonna interject here real
Yeah.
quick. There's a lot of documentation and articles written about synanon.
Mhm.
Synanon actually still exists in Germany to this day, I do believe. But I'm not 100% positive on that. But a person I would like to reference right now is an idol of mine. Paul Moritz. From Paleo Future article, The Man Who Fought the Synanon Cult and Won. It's a great article about Paul Morantz. He helped start an underground railroad, helping kids escape from CEDU and Synanon. And it talks about the vasectomies they had to go through, their arranged marriages.
Wow.
Synanon was a very sick and twisted business that really, like I said, it started from a
I
33
can actually give you detail. Sorry to interrupt, Lee, but I can actually give the detail of what went on in there because my parents didn't know, and he was referring to Paul Morantz. This place was disguised as a rehab. My parents didn't know what was really going to happen to me. So I can't blame them because of the fact, and I finally realized that by listening to Paul Morantz, I realized that I can't blame them because they didn't know either. So what happened was immediately shipped to Tamales Bay. And Tamales Bay, they had many places around. They didn't just have it on, everyone looked at it like it was Santa Monica. It wasn't Santa Monica. It is all over. They had them all over. They had one in San Francisco. A whole community in this Tamales Bay kind of ranch area that was like 90 miles from the nearest town. And so I was automatically shipped to the Tamales Bay one so that I wouldn't be able to leave.
Okay, please continue. So you went to Tamales Bay. That's Marin County, or is it Sonoma County, kind of by the water, right?
So there was a people, Mel Wasserman and Chuck Diederich, started both Synanon and CEDU. And that's the thing that I want to make sure is clear here, that they were two different things. Synanon was the one that got labeled a cult. CEDU was more labeled a troubled teen, peer-driven communitive rehab place for troubled teens.
Gotcha.
And so, Stacy, you were where again there in Tamalia Bay?
I was in Tamales Bay in Marin County.
Right. Is that the place you split from?
That's places where I split from, and it was a very hard thing.
I want
Nobody
to
got
ask
out.
you. I want to ask you about things that happened there because I know what happened there. If you don't mind.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. Now, Chuck Diederich. You never saw Chuck Diederich. You only heard him over a microphone.
Interesting.
So that was the first thing they do is they make you eat bad food, like the food that they give you, because they put me in something called the Punk Squad, which is like a military boot camp kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I was really good at manipulating, and I was very good. I got out of the Punk Squad, okay, and before anybody else. And because I was so good at manipulation that they said, if you fake it, keep a smile on your face. That's all they wanted you to do. And I did it so well, but I knew what I was doing in my head. I knew I was going to work. Yeah, I knew I was going to work this in my head. I thought, there's got to be a way. I'm going to work it. I'm going to do exactly what they tell me to do. And I did. And what happened is
So
I was,
Stacy started doing what Synanon did, and that was something called the Synanon game. Now, unfortunately, Stacy and I have debated this for years, and you can hear my emotions getting involved here. Sorry. Once you start this game, it's
Basically,
just
like scream at each other, right? Isn't that the whole thing?
oh, it was screaming was the nice part. It was the insult, the abuses.
it was the screaming. Not only did they say scream, not only did they scream at you, it was like, it was, it was like it was so abusive. I can't even describe it.
I
They
can help,
tore,
Stacy. They would call you a whore, bitch, slut. One of the things about these programs, and I want to go really into the programs because Straight Inc. used phases. CEDU, Synanon, and Cascade use these families and different, structures that you progress from younger students to older students to upper school. And there's always been a disparity when I've always talked with other survivors about their programs and the things they experienced. I didn't experience what Stacy did. I didn't get
okay,
molested. I didn't get abused and beaten by men. I didn't, Stacy to this day still deals with stalkers and things like that. So for her to rehash things from 35 years ago is not easy.
No, I understand.
okay, so what happened, it wasn't 35 years ago, but that's okay. What happened
25.
what happened is that is I was taken from my dorm, and I was molested by different men. I hadn't been molested in my life by my family or like that, that's my abusers in my life. Okay, and
Well, you split, right?
eventually, yeah, but there's things that I think you should know that went on there that will be very, very important. They had things called demonstrations, and what they did in the demonstrations is that they would actually have everybody gather around by microphone, and they would have there wasn't staff there. This was a cult. This was truly a cult. Those
Hey,
people there wanted to be there. I'm getting a little hyped up because it's like my emotions are high on this one, okay? This was truly a cult. And they beat people up. Yeah.
Love what you're doing. I love you to death. I'm going to interject some things right here because I actually have got the CEDU Wikipedia page in front of me.
Okay, can I just,
Yeah.
I lose track if you bring
Yeah, go
those
ahead.
things up.
Sorry.
But what I'm saying, this is truly a cult. They beat people up, and you'd have to watch. If you smiled, laughed, or cried, you'd be the next one to be beat up. They had things like, every 3 years, people had to change their marriages, and it was called change partners and dance. So you can only be married to a person for 3 years, and then they had to switch partners.
Wasn't there like a kind of an intense like system of martial arts, and there were people in there who were like guardians of Synanon who would beat people up or something like that?
Yes, sir, there very much was.
Okay.
Chuck Rich had what was called the Imperial Marines. The Imperial Marines took a rattlesnake, de-rattled the rattlesnake, and put it in Paul Morantz's mailbox to try to kill him.
And then
So that's what says there wasn't really a martial arts thing.
Right.
They had these guys that were brainwashed to do whatever he said.
Right. It's a lot like Scientology. It actually bit him, Paul Morantz, and he ended up being hospitalized. So it was pretty serious. Yeah. Hi, this is William. At this point of the conversation, Stacy's sound went bad again, and we talked for a little bit, and Lee Veltman picks up the conversation. So here's Lee.
Talking about this stuff, and if we talk too much about every little detail, it makes it very confusing for a lot of people, okay? So I'm going to try to
Okay.
cut through some stuff here. I'm really appreciating the amount of emotions you're expressing now. Um, but you got to remember, we sat in those forums and we've already dealt with these emotions. We did the workshops. We, sat in the heroes and listened to Les Mis so many times that we can't talk about music without it having an effect on us. I mean, when Simon and Garfunkel's I Am an Island is a song we love, it's great that we can now talk about this stuff without having the emotions overwhelm us anymore. We've had 2 years of having a hard time talking about this stuff, so I want to talk about the CEDU Educational Services Incorporated.
Okay, can I please say something?
Well, let me finish. Let me finish, please, dear. I'm not trying to be rude. This is important. I will take 5 minutes, okay? Because the original CEDU period is 67 to 85. And then there's the expansion stuff and the CEDU Education, the Brown School stuff that ties into my interview with William last week, remember?
Right.
I'm skipping ahead in this article, Rocky, to get to the expansion and the CEDU Education Brown School stuff. So let's go ahead and jump straight into when you got sent to CEDU, because I don't want to focus on the synanon CEDU. I want to talk about Running Springs, okay?
I will talk about it, but can I talk about how I got out of there?
Yes, I'm trying to get you there, but like I said, you're kind of
Okay,
focusing
I
on a
just
lot of
want to
the
make
story and not the facts. Sorry.
Okay, I got out of there because I smiled. I faked it. Bottom line, there's so much more to it. I can't even tell you what went on in 5.5 months. There's so
Right,
much
and then
more
you
to it.
tell the split story when you ran away. That's a funny story.
Okay. So I worked for Chuck Diedrich's son by faking everything, manipulating the system, their system. I manipulated it. I used it
What's
against them.
Chuck's first name?
Okay, so I saw a bus coming to come to San Francisco, and everyone just believed me so much that I walked into the bus, and I got in the bus. I went to San Francisco, and I got to the San Francisco house, and I started to run. And I ran down San Francisco. The streets of San Francisco. I had 3 girls that ran after me. I thought, oh my God, they're going to try to get me, but they can't now. I'm in the public, they can't now. They can't get me. And I'm like, too bad for them. So they said, slow down, slow down. I said, what? I said, you can't get me. And they said, we want to come with you. I had 3 girls that wanted to come with me.
These places,
And
split stories. That's why it's fun to talk with Stacy and me, because we break it down into the split stories. And, when people would split from these places, they would end up at like a Scent Wilderness program or a Sue's Wilderness program and then resent back to these places. So that's what Stacy's kind of explaining right now with what she's going through.
I couldn't possibly escape from to Moss Bay. I could have escaped from there. They would have got me.
Right, because a lot of these places were locked up.
And I knew I was free. Yeah, I was free when I got to San Francisco, and I knew it. And then 3 guys came after us trying to get us back, and they couldn't. We hopped on a bus. I told the bus driver what was going on. He kicked him off.
Right. So how did you get to Running Springs?
Well, my mom knew I couldn't live that life, and they did some more research. And
did they hire an educational consultant by any chance?
Yes, they did hire an educational consultant.
Because that's how I got sent to 2 of my boarding schools as well. And so the educational consultant recommended you go to CEDU, correct?
Correct.
And that's when you got sent. Now, did you know you were going back to the same program that you had left?
No.
Right, that's the thing. So you get sent to CEDU, and CEDU was run by Chuck and Betty Diedrich, correct? And it was
C was run by Mel Wasserman.
Okay.
Mel Wasserman owned CEDU, lived there, everything.
Okay. And then, so I guess Chuck was at Synanon doing that Synanon stuff. Okay, cool.
Right. 2 separate people, 2 separate entities.
Right, I know.
And I just want to make that very clear.
Academy and Cascade, remember?
Stop it. And so CEDU, they went through my clothing. Of course, they didn't cut my hair because it was just growing. My hair was like barely growing. But they would cut, normally when they came in, and the guys, they would cut the guys in those hair when they came in, and they were really nice to me. They realized that I was in shock. They realized that what I had gone through, and they actually felt bad for what I had gone through. They weren't feeling like they were another part of synanon. They were told, as far as I knew, they said, we are not synanon. I went through a lot of things there. I didn't go through physical abuse. I did go through mental abuse. I did not go through physical abuse, but they were nice to me. And because I was so scared that I wanted to die. At some point in my life, I just wanted to die.
Yeah, William and I, when he interviewed me, I actually mentioned about how kids would slit their wrist and stuff to get sent away from these places. Stacey, I hope you don't mind me interjecting real quickly. I wanted to go over the profits. The profits at CEDU and the celebrations and workshops at Cascade is what kind of really separates our two stories. The profits at CEDU were called the Truth Prophet, the Children's Prophet, the Brothers Keepers Prophet. Then there was the Dreams, the I Want to Live Prophet, the Values Prophet, the Imagine Prophet. And then there was the I and the Me workshop, and then the Summit workshop, which those are similar things we did at these other places as well. So we kind of want to keep this going.
Why did they pronounce that prophet instead of prophet? What was that?
That actually comes
because
from a
I'll tell you, I've got the answer for that.
Go for it.
I've got an answer. It was taking the prophet and using it in the action. So if you use your feet, it uses it in action.
Gotcha.
CEDU meant everybody was there. A lot of people were there for probation. When I walked in, they said, are you private or probation? I had no idea what they were talking about on their probation. So there was a lot of people, and most of them were way older than I was. In their 20s, there was even a 40-year-old man there. They weren't.
Hey,
it wasn't.
Stace, I'm going to ask you something about the pendulum. Can I read the definition in my article I have here?
Yes, absolutely. We're showing the pendulum, yes.
So the pendulum was what William and I talked about in the very first thing that you do at these schools. It was called the truth. And it's the passage from the prophet that is focused on in the truth is, to the extent that you feel your sorrow, you will feel your joy. Now this is depicted in the truth prophet by a pendulum, which swings from one side, which is sorrow, to the other, which is joy. And that comes from a book by a guy named Kahlil Gibran's. And it says, whatever his intent, the CEDU ideology translated this as meaning that in order to feel any happiness, the student, which Stacy and I were students, must be made as miserable as possible first. And that's why I've always kind of said they broke down our egos, just like the build camps do and stuff. And so
like
there's so many different,
did.
Yeah. And that's what I said. Is that
okay, some of the stuff they took was from synanon. Like, for instance, the raps. They had raps where they had games at synanon that tore you down. Not as abusive as CEDU. I mean, synanon was much more abusive. But with the prophets, like, you'd stay up all night at synanon, and you would discuss how a boat floats.
We had to write our own eulogies and stuff. We had to get contracts. And my contracts is I am an honest man. What's your contract, Stacy?
And so they changed my name to Leanne. So they had changed my name.
That CEDU was up when they did that, right? Was it CEDU?
Yeah, CEDU did that. CEDU did that. I was no longer Stacy. I was Leanne.
Now this was actually standard practice. When people would go through these last 3 or 4 different workshops or prophets, as they were called, and they would get these things called their contracts. Let's say your name was Bill but your real name on your birth certificate was William. They would want you to use your name William to make it more impacting.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. But my name wasn't Leanne. They just gave me that name. My middle name is Lee, and they didn't like that, so they gave me Leanne. So
What's interesting about these whole stories, it seems like synanon and CEDU, they had very little oversight. Like there's no outside influence. There's no board of directors or something like that to kind of hold on these things.
That was one of the things that I'm going to want to get to when we discuss this later on, was what the Cascade School happened. Because while I was there, Stacy went there, it wasn't accredited. While I was there, it became an accredited school. So that kind of sets it apart.
When I was at CEDU, it was an accredited place. It was accredited. And,
but it lost its accreditation. Like I says, it's CEDU and CEDU Incorporated, the Rocky Mountain Academy, Boulder Creek Academy, Rocky Mountain Northwest Academy. Those places are all shut down now. Some of them have been renamed and are opened up in a different name now. So that's why I do a lot of research in the troubled teen industry.
They put you go to CEDU, they put you in families. Same what they did with the Cascade, right? They put you in families. I started off in a family called Genesis, and that was for the new people there. And then you graduate from the family to the next family, And I didn't know I was acting like I was in synanon. You know?
Yeah. Hey, Stace, we're kind of getting bogged down a little bit. How did you get out of CEDU?
I did well, and I was let out of CEDU. I got home. I had no way. I had no idea how to deal with the real world.
Yeah, that was the same problem I had when I was 19 when I left Cascade. So how long were you between CEDU and Rocky Mountain Academy up in Oregon?
I got sent back to CEDU because I started doing drugs and alcohol
again. Back to CEDU?
I got sent back to CEDU.
I'm sorry.
And then from CEDU, they started Rocky Mountain.
Personal question: who did you go? Because I know I've heard a lot about celebrities at CEDU. Did you know anyone there that we've discussed in the past? Like I said, I know that Paris got sent to Rocky Mountain, and I know Dina De Niro was at a CEDU place and got sent to Cascade.
Okay.
So you got sent back to CEDU, and how long were you at CEDU for? Again, the second time.
I was barely there, and I got sent to Rocky Mountain Academy.
Okay, and now Rocky Mountain Academy was where?
In Idaho.
Okay, that's right. So in Idaho, where in Idaho was it?
Bonners Ferry, Idaho,
okay.
Which is like close to Canada, Spokane, Washington, Montana.
You probably weren't far from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I went to college in Missoula, Montana. So.
I'm not really close. I flew close to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Okay. And like an hour and a half or so.
That must have been like from CEDU, which CEDU was west of LA and Running Springs up in the mountains. So it's kind of like pine trees and mountainy looking. But yeah, it must have been such a culture shock to go from Southern California and that kind of environment up to BFE, Idaho, freezing cold, snow.
Right.
What was the RMA Academy's program like? What was the family you started off in there? We've gotten really far into this stuff, and that's where, like I says, I know this information very well. The family I started off, like I says, Cascade was such an experience for me that it's, the Fountainhead 1 and 2 were the first two new families that I was in. And that comes from Ayn Rand, which Ayn Rand in these books that we would read, it was a very cerebral school. Like I says, the schoolwork wasn't that hard, but the workshops and the things we did out, socializing and the stuff impacted me to this day. And so like I said, is when I read through the proceeds of the CEDU school and it talks about, they had Battle of the Bands, the pendulum, the chrome ball, disclosure circles, different tools is what they call them today. Tools that they would use to make these kids feel like they could discuss anything they wanted.
Right.
And like I said, but they broke us down into different ideologies. And that's what I
really... Can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can, dear. And that's why, like I said, is you have the truth, youth, and friends, which the basic way I like to describe that is the truth is being honest. The youth is about your little boy, your pure soul, your little boy. Basically, the ideology behind your little boy is the person who's not afraid, wants to go and experience life, and isn't afraid to go speak to anybody, and just they're newborn, and like says that was the idea, and it kind of bugs me when it's about creating a new identity almost in these peoples.
Hi, this is William. We took a little break and we returned with Stacey talking about her experiences in Idaho. So here's Stacey Leppe.
I want to tell you, Idaho was my awakening. Idaho was awakening for me. I went there broken, and I walked out with my boyfriend broken because I left before I should have. Idaho was a wonderful place. And when I was there, it ended up to be bad. I know the other stories. But it was actually an awakening for me. I started doing things like Winter Olympics and Summer Olympics that they used to do there. I started achieving things that I thought I could never achieve them most. It was a great feeling. I left with my boyfriend. Bad decision. And that's how I ended up at Cascade. The school had split. And the staff, most of the staff went and made Cascade. I had two options for my parents. I either go to Cascade or back to RMA. I chose Cascade because most of the staff I knew left and went there and started their own school. And that's how I ended up at Cascade. Cascade, I didn't even listen to anything. I didn't do anything. I was just, I drank.
You were there at the Golden Road Cascade. Cascade from when it was Michael Allgood, Annie Zinnier, the Casses, the Tillises, left the CEDU school and came up to Redding, California, or Whitmore, California, and bought this Cascade school.
Paul Reed, everybody went there.
Right. It's Idaho now.
All the staff. Yeah, so when that happened, all the bad things started happening to CEDU and RMA. And so I sent to Cascade. I didn't listen. I didn't do anything. I drank. I went to bars because they put me in the town versus putting me in the dorms of Cascade. They put me in the town to live with two girls. And then they put me in a farmhouse afterward to live with these people. Back in Redding. I ended up on drugs in Redding. I was doing cooking and stuff like that. And
she's gotten sober now. She's lived a very progressive life. She has two wonderful children. Her relationship with her mother is much improved. I've had a very hard time the last 2 years of my life. I have reached out to other survivors, and it took me a while to understand that the kids who went to Rocky Mountain Academy or Boulder Creek Academy or maybe Provo Canyon School or Heritage House or Elon School or any of these other thousands of different names that end in ranch or academy, I couldn't distinguish how to talk to them for a while until I talked with Stacy. Until she started pointing out to me that she went to RMA, and I was like, well, RMA CEDU. And she's like, no, it was, and I was like, I didn't get it. Right. So it's only been the revelations and the enlightenment that I've gone through in discussing things and making a good friendship. Like Stacy's like my sister now. We discuss things about this stuff, and I wouldn't have gotten through the last 3 years of my life without her. My best friend took her own life. And then my sister took her own life. And then a year later, my mom died. And, my whole family turned their back on me. Thank God I had the friends I did, that they stood by my side and they really understood what I was dealing with having issues with, stuff that goes back 25 years to the school when I shipped off. And basically it broke my family. It disassociated me from my family. I've never felt, ever since I was 13, shipped off to military school, I always felt broken.
And it's something that I've come to terms with today. I'm not broken, but there's times I beat myself up. There's times I'm harder on myself than anyone else. And I know Stacy deals with this on a daily basis. I think that's true for everybody. It was an amazing experience. One of the things Stacy and I are discussing is the fact that kids were molested and abused in these different schools. She went through it. I didn't. Like I says, when you talk about Castle by the Sea, Tranquility Bay, Samoa down in Mexico, and gay aversion therapy, and so many different aspects of this, it's a difficult, very difficult conversation, period.
Right.
And I have a conversation like this almost every other day now in my life because new survivors find out about me talking about this stuff so openly. They want to learn about the places they went through and the connections between all these things. So it's been a difficult thing. And I love Stacy for being my friend. Trust me, we unfriended each other on Facebook a year ago over principles and stupid stuff. And we're great now. I appreciate these people being my friends, especially you, William. You've really helped me out with a lot of this stuff too with your...
Not a problem. Anytime. What do you think is your message for the future or for people who, come across this information? I know that you kind of summed that up in our last interview, but what would you like to say to people who've gone through these kind of horrific schools?
There's always hope. Don't lose faith. I mean, one of the hardest things about these things is the little terms they would use. And I can't find a piece of paper I'm looking for right this second. That my buddy, here it is. If not now, when? You are what you do. What a piece of work is man. You are your brother's keeper. Your work is your love made visible. Your word is your bond. Envy is ignorance and imitation, suicide. Who are you? All that I give is given to myself. To love another is to see them. Sorry. That's always the hardest one for me to read because it's always impacted me. But to love another is to see the face of God. And then to teach only love, for that is what you are. And so I have a hard time with the word love. I like using the word like because love is too powerful for me. Because like we talked earlier about the pendulum, your joy is your sorrow unmasked. To the degree that you feel sorrow, to that same degree you can feel joy. And while I look back on my life with sorrow, I remember all the joy. And so that gives me hope for the future. There are so many people arguing over stupid things right now. And if you want to have a future for not your children, but your grandchildren and your grandchildren, we need to address these issues of education, institutionalization, and we can go for many different topics from there. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for letting me do this.
Awesome. Lee, thank you very much for sharing. I really appreciate you taking your time out to share your story and give that kind of testimony of other people of your experiences. I think it's very, very important. So I definitely appreciate you taking the time to share your message. Thank you very much, Lee Veltman and Stacey Leppe.
Thank you.
That was William Ramsey Investigates, featuring Lee Veltman and Stacey Leppe, discussing the Cascade School, CEDU, and Synanon. Thank you for listening.